Oops, we forgot your seat. Chloe giggled, pointing straight at the exit doors. Maybe you can just stand in the hallway and watch me cut the cake. Behind her back, my biological father stared at the floor, his cowardly silence twisted like a knife in my chest. This family had just officially kicked me out the door, erasing the existence of the person who had broken her back carrying them for years. The humiliation tried to swallow me whole, but they forgot who I am. I do not just cover my face and run away crying. My sister deliberately forgot my seat. Fine. I tightened my grip on the thick envelope bearing the court seal, looked straight into the bride's eyes, and let out a cold smirk. Do not worry. It seems I just forgot to hide your forged divorce papers too. Chloe's patronizing smile died instantly. Her face turned corpse white, her eyes wide with absolute panic as I turned around, casually dropping that envelope of death into the best man's hands. The groom was exactly 3 minutes away from signing the marriage license, but to understand why I would personally destroy my own sister's big day, we have to flip back through this entire tragedy. 6 months before the wedding. Sunday dinner at my parents' house sounded like a cheap sitcom. Loud, rehearsed laughter. The constant clinking of wine glasses, the greasy smell of garlic butter and roasted beef hung in the room thick enough to make my stomach churn. While I chewed tasteless meals during late-night shifts to save every dollar, my parents poured $60 bottles of red wine. Pouring it for Liam, my sister's fiancé, ignoring the exhaustion carved into my face. Liam reached across the table, taking the ceramic bowl of roasted potatoes from my hands. He had the earnest, naive face of a well-paid academic. Chloe mentioned you paid off her divorce lawyer 2 years ago. We really appreciate it, Mason. Thank you. My jaw locked. My breathing stopped for a fraction of a second. 2 years, I stared at the garlic butter pooling on my white plate. My mind instantly pulled up the financial spreadsheet I maintained at home with absolute precision. I wrote the final check to that family law firm exactly 11 months ago. 13 months unaccounted for. That was not a simple memory lapse. That was a calculated, deliberate gap. I set my heavy silver fork down on my cloth napkin. I aligned the metal edge perfectly parallel to the butter knife. Not a single sound. When exactly did you see the final court ruling, Liam? I asked. My voice was completely flat, cold, stripped of any familial warmth. Chloe jolted. Her silver spoon clattered against the porcelain plate, a sharp, grating noise that pierced the room. Oh, the paperwork was done forever ago. She pitched her voice high, overly sweet, bordering on hysterical. She snatched the bottle, frantically pouring more red wine into Liam's glass until it almost spilled. At that exact second, a hard-pointed shoe heel drove straight into my shin under the table. The impact was brutal. Pain flared up my leg, the flesh instantly throbbing and bruising against the bone. I did not flinch. I did not rub my leg. I slowly raised my eyes across the table. My mother. She was glaring at me, her eyes wide, flashing a violent, silent threat. Keep your mouth shut. To my right, my father Robert let out a nervous, hacking cough. He stared intently at the salt shaker, terrified to meet my gaze. He forcefully scooped another thick slice of beef onto Liam's plate, letting out a booming, hollow laugh to drown out the sudden suffocating tension. Not one of them looked at the dark circles under my eyes. Not one of them cared that I had sacrificed my own health, grinding through exhausting shifts just to pay off that massive debt. Instead, my own mother used physical violence under a dining table to force my silence. They wanted me to protect this rotten, expensive facade. I picked up my glass. The ice cubes clinked against the heavy crystal. I took a slow sip. The freezing water slid down my throat, numbing the disgust rising in my chest. I forced my facial muscles to stretch into a tight mechanical nod. I let them shift the conversation to vanilla buttercream cake flavors. I chose silence. My restraint was not weakness. It was preparation. 2 in the morning, my apartment was dead silent. The only illumination came from the harsh blue glare of my laptop screen, casting pale shadows across my face. I opened my billing spreadsheet. I highlighted the law firm's 9-digit case number. Copy. I opened the web browser and accessed the county court's electronic public portal. I typed Chloe's legal name. Hit enter. The loading circle spun with agonizing slowness. My pulse thumped steadily against my neck. The case summary finally populated on the screen. My eyes tracked down the columns of legal filings, scanning line by line. Motion filed, continuance granted. Failure to produce financial records. There was no final judgment, no divorce decree. I scrolled to the very last entry. At the bottom of the page, a single word was stamped in bold, capitalized letters. Dismissed. The judge had thrown the case in the trash. Chloe was not divorced. June 2023. 3 years ago. My body felt like crushed glass. 48 straight hours on the clock analyzing financial records until my vision blurred. My feet throbbed inside my heavy work boots. I just wanted my bed. I pulled into the driveway, killed the engine, and heard the cold rain hammering the car roof. Then I saw her. Chloe stood on my front porch, completely soaked. A massive, obnoxious pink suitcase leaned against her leg. The damp, sour smell of wet denim hit my face the second I walked up the concrete steps. "Ethan took everything," she whispered. She stared down at her ruined suede shoes, playing the perfect victim. "He controls all the accounts. I do not have a dime." She had no proof. She just had tears. I did not ask questions. I did not wrap my arms around her or tell her everything would be okay. I grabbed the heavy pink plastic handle, dragged the suitcase into the living room, and threw a rough, dry towel at her chest. We sat at the kitchen island. I did not offer hot tea. I pulled a yellow legal pad from the drawer. I drew a hard, straight line down the middle of the paper. 6 months of support, I said. My voice scraped my throat. I pay the landlord directly. I write the check straight to the family law attorney. 0 cash in your hands. You get a job by Monday. Chloe sniffled. She wiped her running nose on her wet sleeve, shrinking into the stool. "Thank you," she whimpered. She promised to get on her feet. The words sounded hollow the second they left her mouth. 2 days later, the front door lock clicked. My mother used the spare key I gave her for emergencies. She marched straight into my kitchen, bringing a suffocating cloud of heavy floral perfume into my quiet house. A sharp, loud smack echoed off the tiles as she slammed her designer leather purse onto my clean granite counter. She crossed her arms. 6 months is an arbitrary timeline, Mason, she said. Her voice dripped with rehearsed pity, but her eyes were hard, calculating. She is in a crisis. Your father says you need to step up. I stood at the sink. Cold water rushed over my scarred hands. I squeezed the yellow dish sponge until my knuckles turned white, fighting the urge to scream. I am not carrying her for the rest of her life, I said, staring blindly out the window. My father hovered by the doorframe. He refused to step fully inside. He kept his hands stuffed in his jacket pockets, shuffling his feet on the hardwood. "You make good money," he muttered, looking at the ceiling. "Do not be so cheap. Family takes care of family." The absolute hypocrisy of that statement made my stomach turn. They were taking care of her using my bank account. Not one person asked if I was tired. Not one person cared that my eyes were bloodshot from working double shifts. That night, the exhaustion finally broke my resistance. I sat alone, in the dark. I pulled out my checkbook and pressed the pen down so hard it almost tore through the paper. I opened my laptop. The harsh blue light illuminated the empty room. I created a new spreadsheet and named the file Family Support. I started typing in the columns: rent, legal fees, minimum credit card payments, a massive, endless financial bleed. Have you ever been forced to drain your own hard-earned savings to fix a sibling's mess? Hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and leave a comment below. Just type yes if your family treats you like a backup ATM. I read every single one of your stories, and trust me, you are not alone in this. The money drained from my account buying Chloe's laziness month after month. With every line of financial data I entered, I built a cold brick wall around my chest. I realized the bitter truth. I was never a daughter in this house. I was just a lifelong insurance policy. The laptop keyboard clicked in the silence. Clack, clack. It sounded exactly like a steel vault locking shut. For 2 years, I lived like a machine. While Chloe slept until noon, complaining about how unfair the job market was, I stayed awake until 3 in the morning. I buried my face in financial fraud cases. I chewed on dry, chalky protein bars and drank black coffee so burnt it tasted like ash just to stay conscious. I canceled holidays. I ignored my friends. I worked overtime every single week, dragging my exhausted body through endless shifts just to fill the financial hole my sister kept digging. My hands grew calloused from gripping steering wheels and shuffling hundreds of file boxes, but my mind, it grew razor sharp. August 2025. I finally got promoted to major. That same month, I drained my savings and closed on a high-security condo across town. Not a single person from my family showed up to my promotion ceremony. No phone call, no card, nothing. But the day I moved in, my mother and Chloe suddenly found the time to visit. They did not bring a housewarming gift. No flowers, no cheap bottle of wine. My mother walked straight past me, leaving a trail of heavy perfume in my clean, empty living room. She wrinkled her nose, looking at the ceiling. She ran a finger over the smooth surface of the kitchen island. "Place is a little cramped, do not you think?" she scoffed. Chloe stood next to her, inspecting her manicured nails. "Smells like bleach and loneliness." I did not react. I stood by the door, keeping my posture completely rigid. My mother turned around, holding her hand out, palm up. A silent command. "I need a spare key, Mason," she said. Her tone left no room for argument. "In case of a family emergency. You know how things get." I looked at her outstretched hand. I looked at the heavy gold rings on her fingers, rings paid for by my father while I paid for her youngest daughter's life. I stepped backward. My spine pressed against the solid oak frame of the front door. I kept my eyes locked on hers. I did not blink. "The building manager keeps a master key for real emergencies, Mom," I said. My voice was as flat as concrete. Chloe let out a sharp, mocking laugh. She leaned against the pristine white counter. "What, you afraid someone is going to steal this little matchbox from you?" I did not answer her. I did not justify my boundaries. I just raised my hand, grabbed the brass handle, and pulled the front door wide open. The hallway outside was quiet, a clear, undeniable invitation for them to leave. My mother's face flushed dark red. She dropped her hand. She glared at me, a look of pure, venomous offense, before she grabbed her designer purse. She stomped past me, the sharp heels of her shoes stabbing the hardwood floor. Chloe rolled her eyes, huffing loudly as she followed her out. They expected me to apologize. They expected me to beg them to stay. I waited until their shadows disappeared down the hall. Then I grabbed the heavy wooden door and pulled it shut. Click. The heavy metal deadbolt slid into place with a sharp, dry snap. It was the loudest sound in the world. I stood in the middle of my empty living room. For the first time in my life, I exhaled. A long, unburdened breath. The air smelled like fresh paint and quiet. No unpaid bills scattered on the counter. No manipulative sighs. No heavy footsteps of people who only saw me as an open wallet. An impenetrable fortress. I walked over to the kitchen island, tracing the cold granite with my fingertips. Then a harsh, buzzing sound vibrated across the stone surface. My phone screen lit up in the dim room. A new email notification popped up. Sender Chloe Blake. Subject wedding budget estimate. Need your approval, ASAP. The quiet did not last. The second storm was already gathering. I sat in my locked apartment staring at the bank statements Chloe had emailed me. My eyes dragged across the screen, passing over the endless charges for fresh floral arrangements, the 5-tier cake, the custom invitations. Then my finger stopped on the trackpad. March 2025. A direct deposit of $8,600 hit Chloe's checking account. The transaction description was crystal clear. Refund for unused retainer hours. It came from the exact family law firm I had been paying for 2 years. My heart rate slowed to a heavy, methodical beat. I scrolled down. Exactly 48 hours after that refund cleared, a new debit appeared. $8,500. Paid directly to the Grand Hotel. A deposit for their luxury ballroom, $8,600. That was the exact amount of hazard pay I had saved. Money earned while working graveyard shifts, grinding my teeth against the freezing cold, eating stale food, and barely sleeping. Chloe did not just waste my money. She stole the refund to fund her fake wedding. I picked up my phone and dialed her number. "The final $17,500 for the catering comes with one condition," I said. My voice was ice. "What now, Mason?" she snapped. "Email me a copy of your final divorce decree with the official red court stamp." A sharp, breathless silence hung on the line. Then she shrieked. A high grating noise accusing me of being paranoid, controlling, and jealous of her happiness. I did not say a single word. I let her scream until she slammed the phone down. I set my phone on the desk. I watched the digital clock on the corner of my monitor. Exactly 2 hours later, an email landed in my inbox. One attachment: Final Divorce Decree.pf. She actually thought she could outsmart me. I clicked open the file and zoomed in to 200%. The harsh glare of the monitor reflected in my glasses. I scanned every single line of text. It took me less than 3 minutes to find the sloppy edits. The county clerk's digital stamp on the left margin was completely pixelated. The text alignment on page 3 was shifted a half-inch to the right. But the most glaring mistake was the date. The date stamped on this final judgment was 2 weeks after the court had officially dismissed the case online. I opened my external hard drive. I pulled up the temporary support order from a year ago and dragged the two windows side by side. They were identical. Every comma, every spacing error. Chloe had used cheap software to scrub the temporary order and type "Final Divorce Decree" over the header. She was no longer just a lazy sister draining my wallet. She had officially crossed the line into federal crime. That afternoon, I walked into Sarah Jenkins' office. Sarah was an old friend from the academy, a former military lawyer who now handled brutal civil litigation. Her office was completely silent, smelling faintly of dry printer ink and expensive lavender wax. I tossed the printed stack of documents onto her mahogany desk. Sarah pushed her wire-rimmed glasses up her nose and flipped through the pages. The only sound in the room was the sharp rustle of paper. She stopped at page 3. She tapped the end of her silver pen against the desk. Tap, tap, tap. "She played you," Sarah said, looking up. Her eyes were sharp, devoid of any pity. "Forging government documents is a federal offense, Mason. Go down to the courthouse, pull the original physical file. Do not say a word to her. Let the law crush this." For the first time in 3 years, the crushing weight in my chest eased. Sarah did not judge me. She did not tell me that family is family. She saw a crime and she offered a hammer. I nodded slowly. I picked up my phone from the leather chair. It was time to set the final trap. My phone buzzed on the kitchen island. It was not my mother. The caller ID flashed my father's name. I hit the speaker button and let the phone sit flat on the granite counter. A heavy, raspy sigh crackled through the cheap phone speaker. Robert. The man who had spent my entire childhood staring at the floor to avoid conflicts. "Mason." His voice was thick with hesitation and rehearsed compromise. "I know Chloe is wrong. I know she faked that paper." He paused, waiting for me to react. I stood perfectly still, watching the digital seconds tick by on the microwave clock. "But you make good money," he continued, dropping his voice to a hushed, pleading tone. "You do not even need this 17 grand. If you blow this up, the wedding gets canceled. Our family loses face with all the relatives. Your mother will actually kill me. Just take the hit, Mason. Save our family's dignity." My chest felt like it had been hit with a block of solid ice. My father, the man I once respected. He knew his youngest daughter was committing fraud, stealing the hazard pay I earned by destroying my own health, and his only concern was his own comfort. He would rather watch me get extorted than face his wife's temper. "You sold out your principles because you are afraid of Mom," I said. My voice was completely flat. "But I have no obligation to fund my sister's criminal record. By hiding this, you are an accomplice. Do not ever call me with this tone again." I reached out and tapped the red button. The call ended. The silence in my kitchen was absolute. The final thread of respect I held for my father severed cleanly. I needed a hard confession. I picked up the phone. I typed a text message to Chloe. Precise, airtight. "Confirm in writing that the PDF you just sent is your legal final court divorce decree, and I will clear the catering payment." I set the phone back on the counter. I tapped my index finger against the wood. Tap, tap, tap. 12 minutes, the screen lit up. The bait was taken. Yes, I am legally divorced. Just pay the damn venue. Chloe had just slipped the noose around her own neck using black ink and digital timestamps. Has your own parent ever told you to just keep the peace while letting a sibling abuse or steal from you? If you have been forced to play the bigger person just to save your family's toxic reputation, hit the like button, subscribe, and comment. Keep the peace below. Let me know I am not the only one who had to cut ties to survive. I walked into my home office and sat in front of the dual monitors. My hands moved over the keyboard with mechanical precision. I logged into my banking portals. I clicked the florist's saved payment profile. Delete. I opened the luxury hotel's open bar tab linked to my secondary card. Remove funding source. I accessed the emergency backup accounts my mother insisted on keeping for family safety. I changed every single password to randomized 15-character alphanumeric strings. Click, click, click. The financial pipeline was officially dead. The vault was sealed. I locked my computer screen. I grabbed my heavy black wool coat from the hallway rack and slid my arms into the sleeves. I checked my watch. The money was cut off, but the real bomb had not even been built yet. I opened my front door and stepped out into the freezing morning air. Destination: the county court clerk's office. I sat in Sarah's office staring at the man across the table, Ethan Hayes, my sister's husband. Chloe had painted him as a controlling monster who drained her bank accounts. The reality sitting in front of me was a completely different story. Ethan looked exhausted. He wore a faded canvas work jacket that smelled faintly of motor oil. Heavy dark circles bruised the skin under his eyes. He slid a thick manila folder across the mahogany desk. I signed the divorce settlement a year ago, Ethan said. His voice was hoarse, defeated. She refused to submit her financial disclosures to the court. The judge got tired of the delays and threw the whole case out. Chloe is holding this marriage hostage. Sarah opened the folder. The sharp, dry sound of thick paper flipping filled the quiet room. She pulled out a hidden credit report and set it flat in front of me. $86,000. My eyes locked onto the number. Maxed out credit cards, luxury retail debt, unpaid personal loans. If Chloe went through with a legal divorce, that $86,000 tumor would be split, documented, and made public on the court record. That was the real reason she stalled the divorce. I traced the edge of the paper with my thumb. Her plan was viciously simple. She wanted to marry Liam to access his pristine credit score. She was going to use his name to secure a mortgage on a new suburban house, lock down his assets, and only then secretly fix the forged divorce papers. A cold, heavy dread settled in my stomach. I looked at Sarah. She was already staring back at me. We both realized the exact same thing at the exact same time. Liam Carter was not just an aerospace engineer. He worked for the Department of Defense. He held a top-secret security clearance. If Liam signed a federal marriage license with a woman who was still legally married, hiding $86,000 in debt and forging government documents, his life was over. The government would instantly revoke his clearance. He would lose his career. He would face federal prison for submitting fraudulent information on background check forms. My sister was not just a spoiled brat anymore. She was a parasite. She was perfectly willing to destroy an innocent man's life, his freedom, and his future, just to cover up her own reckless spending. I did not say a word to Ethan. I stood up, gathered the copies of the credit report, the forged PDF, and the real court dismissal, and walked out. The drive back to my condo was a blur of gray concrete and traffic lights. I unlocked my front door, walked straight to my kitchen island, and dropped the files on the granite surface. The apartment was completely silent. I pulled out a yellow legal pad and a black pen. I used a wooden ruler to draw 3 perfectly straight vertical lines down the page. Column 1. The forged divorce decree and the real dismissal order. Column 2. The target to protect Liam Carter. Column 3. The liabilities to isolate Chloe and my parents. I moved with total efficiency. No anger, no tears, just cold mechanical precision. I slid the stack of evidence into a thick cream-colored envelope. I did not write a return address. I sealed the flap shut, pressing my thumb hard along the adhesive edge. I walked into my bedroom and pulled back the sliding closet door. I knelt in front of the heavy steel fireproof safe bolted to the floor. I spun the cold metal dial. I placed the sealed envelope inside right next to my passport. I pushed the heavy steel door shut. The locking mechanism engaged with a deep final click. The evidence was secured, the trap was set. Tomorrow was wedding day. Wedding morning. I pushed open the door to the bridal suite. The room was suffocating. A thick chemical cloud of heavy hairspray mixed with the sickeningly sweet smell of cheap champagne and nervous sweat. Bridesmaids in pale pink silk robes rushed around the fabric, rustling frantically against the carpet. I did not wear a dress. I wore a dark tailored charcoal suit pressed into sharp, clean lines. I stood perfectly straight in the doorway, cutting through the chaos like a blade. Chloe sat in the center of the room staring into a massive lighted mirror. A makeup artist hovered over her shoulder. My mother and father stood behind her, doting on her every move. I stepped forward. I reached inside my inner suit pocket, pulled out the thick, cream-colored envelope, and dropped it flat on the glass vanity. Smack! The dry, hard sound echoed. The bridesmaids instantly stopped talking. The makeup artist froze, holding a brush in mid-air. "You have exactly 1 hour before the ceremony starts," I said. My voice was completely even, flat. I stared at Chloe through the reflection in the mirror. "Take this out to Liam. Tell him the truth before he signs that federal marriage license, and I will step back. I will not interfere." Chloe's face went bone white. The hand gripping her champagne glass started to shake, the liquid sloshing dangerously close to the rim. My mother lunged forward, placing herself between me and the mirror. Her jaw clenched tight. "The paperwork will be fixed after the honeymoon," she hissed, pointing a manicured finger at my chest. "Do not you dare ruin today, Mason. Do not cause a scene." My father took a slow step backward, rubbing his palms together. He stared at the baseboards, silent, useless. The fear in Chloe's eyes vanished, replaced instantly by cornered, narcissistic rage. She spun around in her chair, kicking the makeup stool away. She bared her teeth. "Liam does not need to know," she shrieked, her voice cracking. "If you try to wreck my wedding, I swear to God, Mason, I will walk out there and tell everyone the truth about you. I will tell them you are just a bitter, dried-up old maid who is jealous because you could not land a husband to save your life." The silence in the room became absolute. The makeup artist slowly backed away toward the door. Chloe used the exact thing that built her life: my sacrifice, my single status, because I was too busy working overtime to pay her debts, to humiliate me in front of strangers. I looked at my mother. She gave a short, slow nod, agreeing with every vicious word her youngest daughter just spat. I looked at the three of them, a family unified to protect a felony. The last remaining ounce of pity in my chest froze solid. "The deadline stands," I said. I did not yell. I did not justify my life. I reached out, grabbed the cold paper envelope off the glass, and turned my back. I walked out of the suite, the heavy wooden door closing behind me with a soft click. The hallway was buzzing with guests holding drinks, laughing loudly as they headed toward the garden. I moved through the crowd, my eyes scanning the faces until I found him. Marcus, Liam's best man, a fellow engineer. He was fixing his tie near the elevator bank. I walked straight up to him and shoved the heavy cream envelope into his chest. He grabbed it instinctively, looking confused. "Hold on to this," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "Hand it directly to Liam the second before they walk into the private room to sign the marriage license. Do not give it to anyone else." The garden ceremony ended. Guests flooded into the Grand Hotel ballroom. Upbeat jazz music played from the corner. Crystal chandeliers threw warm light over the massive 5-tier cake. Chloe and my mother stood right by the entrance, positioned in front of the gold-framed seating chart. As I walked in, Chloe let out a high, giggling laugh that carried over the music. She pointed straight toward the heavy brass exit doors. "Oops, we forgot your seat, Mason," she said loudly, making sure the approaching guests heard her. "Maybe you can just stand in the hallway and watch me cut the cake." My father stood a few feet away, staring hard at his polished dress shoes. Silent, weak. Before I could even react to the humiliation, the hotel banquet manager practically ran up to our group. He was sweating. He looked directly at Chloe, holding a digital tablet. "Ma'am, the final payment of $17,500 was declined. The card on file was removed. We need payment right now, or we cut the food service." Chloe's smug smile vanished. She snapped her head toward me, her eyes wide, furious. I took one step back, creating physical distance between myself and the rot of my family. I did not whisper. I let my voice carry through the open ballroom. My wedding gift required one simple condition. I said cold and loud enough for the closest tables to hear. A legal divorce. The bride just confirmed via text a divorce that does not actually exist. The jazz music cut off with a sharp, ugly screech as the band leader noticed the commotion. The crowd went dead silent. Chloe froze. Her mouth opened, but not a single sound came out. At that exact second, down the carpeted hallway, the heavy wooden door to the private signing room flew open. It slammed against the wall with a deafening crack. Liam stepped out. He looked like he had just seen a ghost. The blood was completely drained from his face, leaving his skin a sickly pale gray. Sweat beaded on his forehead. In his left hand, he gripped the cream-colored envelope. In his right hand, he held the thick government marriage license, crushing the paper in his fist. The loud, violent crinkle of the heavy stock paper echoed in the quiet hall. He walked straight toward Chloe. His footsteps were heavy, dragging slightly on the carpet. My mother tried to step in front of him, raising her hands to stop him. He ignored her, completely walking right past her like she did not exist. He stopped inches from Chloe. His hands were shaking violently. He raised the crumpled federal form right in front of her face. "Chloe," Liam said. His voice was ragged, stripped of all its previous warmth. "Who is Ethan Hayes?" The silence shattered. Chloe gasped, stumbling backward on her high heels. She reached out, trying to grab his arm, crying instantly. Liam jerked away from her touch with absolute disgust. He turned on his heel and marched back toward the private signing room. Chloe scrambled after him, her expensive silk dress dragging across the floor. I followed them inside. The efficient Judge Miller stepped in right behind me and shut the door. The air in the small room was suffocating. Liam threw the stack of papers onto the polished wooden table. The forged PDF, the real court dismissal, the hidden credit report. "I hold a top-secret security clearance," Liam yelled. His voice broke, filled with pure panic. "You are going to make me sign a federal document while you are still legally married, while you are hiding 86 grand in debt, while you are forging government records. Were you trying to send me to federal prison?" "Chloe." Judge Miller stood quietly in the corner. He reached into his robe, pulled out his fountain pen, and slowly screwed the cap back on. A sharp, dry click. There would be no signatures today. Liam picked up the custom wedding invitation off the desk and tore it completely in half. He declared the wedding over, pushed past Chloe, and walked out the door. She collapsed onto the carpet, screaming his name, sobbing into her hands. Have you ever had to expose a family member's lies in public just to protect an innocent person? If you have ever been the one to finally drop the truth, hit the like button, subscribe, and comment "Truth Bomb" down below. It takes guts to stand up to your own blood. Let me know I am not alone. I did not look at her on the floor. I turned the brass knob and walked out of the room. The explosion was over, but the fallout was waiting for me outside. The grand ballroom collapsed into utter chaos. The expensive 5-tier cake stood completely abandoned under the warm lights. Guests were grabbing their coats and crowding toward the exit doors, murmuring in shocked, hushed tones. Over by the catering station, the hotel banquet manager was red in the face, aggressively demanding a credit card. I turned my back on the wreckage and walked toward the lobby. Heavy leather shoes clacked frantically against the marble floor behind me. My father. He grabbed the sleeve of my suit jacket, pulling hard enough to jerk my shoulder back. His face was a twisted mask of panic. "Mason, just pay the man," he demanded, his voice cracking. He gestured wildly toward the angry manager. "Swipe your card. You are ruining our reputation. Fix this." I looked down at his trembling hand gripping my jacket. I yanked my arm away. "Wake up to reality, Dad," I said. My voice was hollow, ice cold. "The wedding is dead." I did not wait for his answer. I walked straight out the heavy glass doors into the dark parking lot. The freezing night wind whipped across the asphalt. It bit into my skin, blowing away the thick, suffocating smell of perfume and hot food that had clung to my clothes all night. I dug my keys out of my pocket. My phone started buzzing in my hand. 4 missed calls. A new voicemail notification popped onto the screen. Chloe. I leaned against the cold metal door of my car and hit the speaker button. The audio cracked, distorted by the wind and her frantic sobbing. Mason, you have to talk to Liam, she shrieked through the speaker. Her voice swung wildly between aggressive insults and pathetic begging. Tell him you misunderstood. I will fix the court paper on Monday, I promise. Just come back and pay the hotel. They are going to call the cops. Mason, pick up the phone. It was the desperate, cheap bargaining of a cornered rat. She still thought she could manipulate her way out. She still thought my money would save her. I did not delete the message. I just stared at the dark screen. Then a tall shadow stepped out from behind a concrete pillar a few feet away. Liam. He had a lit cigarette between his fingers, the red cherry glowing in the darkness. He did not say anything. He had heard the entire voicemail playing on speaker, every miserable, toxic word of it. There was no yelling, no more panic on his face, just a deep, exhausted disgust etched into his features. He was looking at the reality of the family he had almost married into. Liam dropped the cigarette onto the cold asphalt and crushed it under the heel of his shoe. He pulled out his own cell phone and dialed a number. It is Liam, he said into the receiver. His voice was completely steady. Cancel all joint accounts immediately, lock everything. He paused, looking directly into my eyes across the dark lot. And draft a report, Liam continued. First thing Monday morning, file a fraud alert with the regional bank where Chloe Blake is currently employed. She submitted a forged court decree to secure our mortgage application. Send them the evidence. I gave him a slow, silent nod. He hung up the phone and walked away into the darkness. Chloe had not just lost her fake wedding. By trying to drag a man with a security clearance into her fraud, she had triggered a zero-tolerance policy. She was going to lose her banking job, her reputation, and face federal charges. The parasite had finally strangled herself. I opened the heavy door of my car and slid into the driver's seat. I turned the ignition. The engine roared to life, shattering the quiet night. I put the car in drive and pulled out of the lot, leaving the ruins of my family in the rearview mirror. 9 months later, Ethan's divorce became finalized. The judge dragged Chloe's hidden $86,000 debt into the glaring light of the public court record. The bank where Chloe worked did not wait for federal charges. Liam's fraud report hit their human resources department on a Monday morning. She was fired by noon. Security escorted her out of the building with her belongings in a cardboard box. She had to sell her luxury SUV just to avoid immediate bankruptcy. With nowhere else to go, she crawled back into our parents' house. Desperate and broke, she hired a cheap attorney and tried to take me to civil mediation. She demanded the $17,000 for the hotel catering, claiming breach of a verbal contract. We sat in a sterile, windowless conference room. The mediator, a retired judge with a face like worn leather, listened to her cry. Then Sarah slid the forged federal document across the polished mahogany table. The mediator took one look at the pixelated stamp and the mismatched dates. He tossed the fake paper back at Chloe with a sharp flick of his wrist. He forced her to drop the claim entirely and ordered her to pay my legal fees. My parents had to drain their remaining retirement savings just to cover the check and keep her out of jail. December brought freezing rain. My phone vibrated on the kitchen counter. My mother's name flashed on the screen. I answered, letting the phone sit on the cold granite. She was crying, real heavy, exhausting sobs. Mason, the debt collectors are calling the house every single day. She wept, her voice trembling through the speaker. Chloe is losing her mind. She just needs a place to stay for a few months to get away from the stress. Your condo has a guest room. You have the space. I stared at the pristine counter. I picked up a damp microfiber cloth and wiped away a single invisible water ring. I used perfectly straight, deliberate motions. She can stay in her childhood bedroom, I said. My voice was completely flat. Do not ask again, and do not show up at my building. Security has a photo of you both. They will not let you up. I hung up the phone. I opened my laptop. I found the old spreadsheet titled Family Support. I right-clicked the icon and moved it into a permanently encrypted archive folder. The financial bloodline was completely severed. Spring arrived. I earned my promotion, a higher pay grade, a new title, a new level of clearance. With my first bonus check, I paid down the principal on my mortgage. With the rest, I bought a new dining table. It was solid oak, no cheap veneers, no hollow core. Heavy grounded and completely real. The rough textured grain of the wood felt honest under my calloused hands. A table built to withstand heavy weight, not to hide secrets underneath it. Tonight the warm yellow pendant lights illuminated the apartment. The rich, heavy smell of roasted garlic, fresh basil, and charred steak filled the air, completely erasing the stale memories of fake laughter from my parents' dining room. Sarah sat at the end of the oak table, pouring a dark red wine. Two of my oldest friends sat across from her, laughing loudly at a terrible joke. The heavy silver forks clinked against the ceramic plates, but this time the sound did not make my stomach churn. No one was walking on eggshells. No one was waiting for a hidden kick under the table. No one looked at me like an open wallet. We were just people who chose to be here. My phone sat flat on the kitchen island a few feet away from the noise. The screen suddenly lit up. The harsh glare cut through the dim room. A text message notification popped up. Mom. I did not read the preview text. I did not feel a sudden drop in my stomach. I did not feel guilt or anger or obligation. I just felt a quiet, absolute nothing. I walked over, picked up the phone, and turned it face down on the cold stone. The screen went black. The laughter from the dining table echoed behind me, loud and warm. Thank you so much for walking alongside me through this long, difficult journey. Your comments, your likes, and your shared stories have been a true source of strength. If you have found your own chosen family after leaving a toxic one behind, I celebrate you. Thank you for listening, and until next time, take care of yourselves.